Welcome to Ladies Talking Love, Season 2, Episode 15. Do I have vaginismus? It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. I feel like it was just common knowledge that sex hurt, and especially for your sexual debut, but even past that sex may just not feel that great, it may hurt, and that's just normal for women. But that is not true. So if there's one thing you should take away, it's that there should not be pain with intercourse. And if there is, then let's figure it out. In this episode, we're going to talk about something called vaginismus. And this is another cause of pain during sex, and not only sex, but anytime anything is inserted into the vaginal canal. And so I hope after this episode, you'll have a little better idea of what vaginismus is, if you may have it, if someone you know may be suffering, and that you'll have resources to know how to get help. Dr. Janelle Howell is commonly known on social media, specifically Instagram and TikTok, as the Vagina Rehab Doctor. She's a certified doctor of physical therapy with specialty in women's health physical therapy. Her mission is to build a culture of radical self-love and high-level vaginal education by teaching women and vagina CEOs about what it means to embrace vaginal fitness and happiness. She's originally from Alabama, but currently lives in Chicago. She teaches vaginal health classes virtually every month and has just released a vagina food e-guide. She's a traveler, a carbohydrate advocate, and there's no better way to describe her than an all-around fun-loving person. Before jumping in, I just wanted to thank you all so much for being here. Thanks for learning with me and growing with me and trying to help make the world a better place for women and for our sexuality. Thanks so much for participating in the giveaway we had recently on Instagram, and of course for sharing this podcast with your friends and family. It means the world to me. I also wanted to apologize that we had a little bit of sound issues during this episode. They're not horrible, but the information is fantastic, and I was just so excited I kept bumping the mic, so sorry for that. But without further ado, let's talk love. I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Janelle Howell onto Ladies Talking Love. Thanks for joining me, Janelle.
Absolutely, Ariel. I'm excited to be here and can't wait to get into the conversation today.
We're going to talk about vaginismus and pelvic floor health. Janelle is a pelvic floor therapist, and this is a topic that we've talked about before, and I still am learning so much. Can you just start us off by introducing a little bit about what pelvic floor health is and what it means and why it's important?
As a physical therapist, any physical therapist is going to work to help someone gain their movement and their overall function back. So whether that be like running or sitting or standing, there's also functions that are more intimate, like pooping, having sex, urinating, or being able to control your bladder when you jump or you sneeze, or those recoveries after childbirth. So a pelvic physical therapist works more intimately with the pelvic floor muscles. And those are muscles at the base of your pelvis that keep you from peeing on yourself, that relax when you are going to have sex, that allow you to poop. All of those muscles that are truly very important, but not many people talk about. That's something a pelvic physical therapist will help you with and help you just get back to your life with exercises, manual therapy, different modalities to help you get back to feeling better.
I love that. And with pelvic floor health, for so long, I've heard so much about Kegels, and in books I've read all these things. Can you tell us a little bit about Kegels and maybe why sometimes they're actually not a good idea? And maybe we shouldn't talk about only Kegels for pelvic floor health.
So Kegels are a contraction. It's no more than a contraction of a muscle and a relaxation. It's like doing a bicep curl and then uncurling your arm to straighten your arm back out. The only difference is you're doing it with the muscles around your vagina and around your anus. So if you were to squeeze your anus in your vagina like you're trying not to fart, and then let go all the way, that's a Kegel. And that alone is what a lot of magazines and doctors go around telling people to do for almost every single problem. If you be on yourself, just Kegel. If sex doesn't feel good, just Kegel more. If you just had a baby, Kegel your life away. It can be helpful for the right person. But many times we see in pelvic physical therapy that the muscles down there are actually really tense. And if you just go home and squeeze more, you're actually going to create more dysfunction. You're going to make your muscles even more uncoordinated, which means your muscles can't relax when they need to. It's like someone clapping on the off beat, or they're dancing and they're not on the right beats. You're doing something that looks okay, but you're just not doing it at the right time. If you're just going around Kegeling all the time, you can actually be decreasing your muscle coordination, because now your muscles are tense and not really able to move and relax and lengthen like they should. So those are some of the reasons why you shouldn't assume you need to be doing Kegeling unless you've really seen a physical therapist, or maybe an OBGYN or a nurse practitioner, someone who's really trained to assess those muscles.
Yeah, to say that would be beneficial for you.
Exactly.
And there's so much that I would love to talk to you about. We could be on for hours, but today I wanted to focus a lot on vaginismus. This is an issue that can come up with women, especially sexually. And so can you just introduce it? What is vaginismus?
Vaginismus is a condition where the muscles around your vagina involuntarily just shut down and close whenever there's an attempt for something to go in. So it could be with a tampon, you can't get the tampon in. It could be with pelvic exam. You have a really difficult time allowing, like if you're trying to get a pap smear for whatever reason, that's difficult. And for sure with sex, maybe you feel aroused and you want to have sex, but as soon as the penis or whatever toy you're using tries to go in, it can't. And so that is a condition called vaginismus. And it's a really frustrating condition because many people don't know what's going on. And it's frustrating not just for yourself, but obviously for your partner as well. So this is a condition that can actually be treated with a pelvic physical therapist.
So what are some of the main causes of vaginismus?
Vaginismus can happen from a variety of different reasons, but many times we don't know. Like sometimes things like sexual trauma. If someone was abused when they were younger, they don't realize, but their muscles have developed like this flight or fight sort of reaction, and they shut those muscles down. And so if those muscles that surround the vagina clamp down because the body is trying to protect them from danger, then those muscles can develop almost like the contracture. So then now when something tries to get in, even if the person wants to, if their muscles have over time tightened, then that can contribute to vaginismus. But surprisingly, there are no definitive, like, oh, if this happens, vaginismus will shortly happen, because we have people that have been sexually abused but don't have vaginismus. So that can be a contributing factor, but also any level of trauma. It's not just sexual trauma. Maybe there was physical trauma going on. Also experiencing pain, like maybe someone had a very painful medical procedure where there was a pelvic exam and that created a lot of tension in the pelvic floor. Those sorts of things can contribute. But again, there's no like A leads to B when it comes to vaginismus. So definitely an area where we're still trying to figure out, what's contributing to it. But for sure, we're pretty confident on what can treat it.
So is vaginismus something that you usually develop over your lifespan or maybe after being sexually active, or do a lot of people go into sexual activity already having vaginismus?
I think the latter part is usually how it shows up. Maybe someone has not been sexually active and then they get married and they were not having sex before marriage, and then it's like, wow, I can't have sex. The penis is not going in, or it was just extremely painful. That's usually how it shows up, but it's not impossible for someone to maybe have an experience of sexual trauma or even medical trauma with the doctor or someone, and then they begin clenching those muscles involuntarily, and then they try to have sex again or something, and the same issue arises where those muscles are just not allowing anything to go in comfortably. So I think it can be either or, but usually it shows up when someone starts to have sex.
And with recognizing vaginismus, if you're listening and you're like, oh, maybe I've experienced some of these, besides not being able to have penetration occur or just having it be hard, are there any other signs to look for?
Those are the main ones, actually.
Okay.
So usually someone with vaginismus doesn't really have pain unless something is trying to insert into the vaginal canal. So again, it could be a tampon, or it could be you're going in for a pap smear or just a pelvic exam, putting a finger in there for whatever reason. Those could be some signs, but generally speaking, there's not pain unless there's an attempt at vaginal insertion.
And what have you noticed that may contribute to vaginismus, particularly for Christian women?
This is an interesting question because there is, the hypothesis and some information out there that Christian women have higher levels of pain with sex. I can clearly, assume that the ideas that we have been told about sex are now following us into the bedroom. So if you were told that sex is bad or sex is dirty, or if you look at someone, you think about sex, you're lusting after them, and just so many different things. And then now all of a sudden you're supposed to enjoy it, want it all the time, just be ready to do it. Then there can be a disconnect in the body. And so if your body has learned that sex is wrong in those moments, your muscles and your hips and your vagina can be thinking something very totally different than what you want it to think if you've been told a different message for umpteen years. And so I think my personal opinion is that not necessarily Christianity itself causes vaginismus or even increases your chance, but that the specific perception you have about sex can contribute, because you could have grown up without a Christian parent, but your parents told you that sex was dirty. Because that mindset of the purity culture infiltrates not just the church. It infiltrates the entire world, to where we shame people for liking sex and enjoying it and wanting it a lot. We think that somehow it is. And so I think that is what's contributing, because a lot of people who are Christian may have grown up in a household that didn't show the positivity and the godliness involved in sex, because after all, we didn't make ourselves like this. God hardwired us to want sex. God did this to us. God made me horny.
It must be good.
Yeah, he's the one. So I think, that's important to realize. And I do think that's probably what's contributing. The few women that I have seen with vaginismus, many of them were religious, not just Christian, but religions that definitely put a big emphasis on not having sex until a certain time. And so likely that's contributing to it. But I have to say, I grew up Christian. I believe in the Bible wholeheartedly, and I don't have any negative views about it. I don't have any qualms. I'm like, when I get married, I'm going to want it. So I do think it depends. But the reality is that Christianity, that's one of the things that we're known for, and that is shaming people for their sexuality.
I think that's such a good point. It happens everywhere, no matter if you're Christian or not Christian. And I love your point as well about the brain-body connection, because so much of orgasm happens in our brain. And so if we have these thoughts and these views, they can actually affect our ability to be aroused and to feel pleasure.
Yeah, the brain is so highly involved with sex. I think I shared this recently on a post. Those people who have spinal cord injury that don't have any sensation to the genitals at all, when they get stimulated inside the vagina, they can actually still have an orgasm.
Wow. There's
a nerve called the vagus nerves that goes straight from the brain to the different areas of the pelvis. And there's a part of that nerve that goes to the cervix. Wow. It's just amazing. It's like your brain is your biggest sex organ. If you're not turned on, if you're not relaxed, if you're not excited, then it's not going to turn out too well.
Totally. Look inward. What's happening in your brain? What's happening in your relationship that's affecting the way you view it? Yes.
Yeah.
When people come in to you who are experiencing vaginismus, what are some things that you can do with them to help?
We do a lot of breathing mechanics. Surprisingly enough, just the way you breathe can really help relax your pelvic floor and your vagina. People that hold their stomachs in a lot, that can actually lead to a dysfunctional pelvic floor. And so we do a lot of breathing mechanics, stretching. not just the vaginal canal, but the muscles around it, like the hips and butt, and even the abdominal wall. For sure, internal manual therapy. And this is where a lot of people may not be comfortable with the idea. It's like, you're going to do what? You're going to stick your finger what? But if you just think about it as a muscle group, the same way like your shoulder or your low back, you wouldn't go to a massage therapist and not have them touch you. Or you wouldn't go to a physical therapist and have knee pain and not want them to touch your knee. It's a similar concept with the pelvic floor. If you're having pain in there, then we need to get into those muscles and really help you release a lot of that tension.
I remember going into a pelvic floor therapist for the first time, and I had no idea what to expect because I'd never been. My OB just suggested like, oh, with this issue you had with your stomach, I think it'd be good to check out pelvic floor therapy. And I remember walking in and I was like, oh, it's that kind of place. Like I am taking my pants off and we are going naked.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. I think a lot of people come in and they're expecting like to do squats and like, and, oh, just check my strength. It's like, no, we're going there. So it can be a surprise for a lot of people, but I think for most, when they realize how it can help them, then they're really open to the idea.
And I remember at first that like, oh, here we are. But it was really great to have someone actually be able to feel and work on those muscles and see what's going on. And that was really helpful. So if you're thinking about, oh, wow, this is something that I'm struggling with, what would you recommend for people? How do they find a pelvic floor therapist?
I would say the most common way is to just tell your primary doctor that you're interested in getting a referral. Most doctors, there are some that are not very helpful with recommendations and referrals, but many times if you tell them, I'm having painless sex, or I'm leaking when I run, or I'm constipated and I feel like my muscles in my pelvis are really tense, can you refer me to a pelvic physical therapist? That usually works well. So just getting that referral is one way. Another way is going to pelvicrehab.com. That's a database to where wherever you live, you can find a pelvic physical therapist near you. So that's awesome because we all live in different places. And you just put your zip code in, you can find one there. So I would say those are two of the most common ways. You can also just Google it, pelvic physical therapy clinic near me or in my city. And you can call the clinic directly as well. So you have a few options, I would say, but getting a doctor's referral will probably be the least work.
I know that this isn't your specialty. You're a pelvic floor therapist, but I love all your stuff on Instagram. You're such a good educator. What are some of the ways we can shift our mindset and views around sexuality, especially some of these things like we talked about that may be causing vaginismus?
I think number one is to realize that your sexual health is right up there with your physical health. So we hear a lot of blood pressure, high blood sugar. I broke my ankle, or, oh my gosh, I have diabetes. So we're constantly hearing about the physical, and we tend to only hear about the sexual when it's in a playful type of, or maybe someone's trying to make a baby. But we have to also realize that sexual health is health, that pleasure is health. And so those things can actually help you with the different aspects of your emotional health, with the different aspects of your physical health. I mean, literally, sex is a workout. So it's something that should be prioritized. It's not dirty. It's the very act that brings humans into this world. That is a very divine and miraculous thing. So really looking at sexuality as this is necessary, this is beautiful, and this is just as important as my physical health.
Yes. And you talk so much on your page about being a vagina CEO. And I love that because I think for a lot of us, the way we've been raised, we may not have felt as empowered to be in charge. And even just recently, it broke my heart, but I was listening to a podcast by Tammy Hill, and she teaches a class at a university about sexual health. And someone had brought up a question about like, after I get married, I just have this view that like whenever my husband is ready to penetrate, he's just going to get to do it because he's ready. And so she just stopped and she was like, hold on, like how many of you have this view? And like the majority of women raise their hands, that this was their view of like, I guess just when he's ready is when I do it. So I love what you're teaching about like, no, we are the CEO of our vagina. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and empowering women to really become that CEO?
So I have to shout out my boyfriend. And he's the one that came up with that name.
Oh, I love it.
He's so supportive. Ryan is his name. And he said, you should encourage everyone to be vagina CEOs. And you want to refer to them as something that's empowering. And so that's really where it came from him. But I like to think of vagina CEO as literally there's so much that you are responsible for managing. If you're the CEO of a company, you have different people under you. Like if you're a vagina CEO, you might have children. You might have a partner that is going to be somehow interacting with your vagina. You have bacteria that live in your vagina that's good, that helps you to fight off infection, that helps with lubrication, that helps with your pH balance. And so as a CEO, you have to be responsible and you have to be a leader, and say, this is a part of my body and I have to invest in it. That's one thing about being a CEO. The company doesn't grow unless you invest in that company. When I have my vaginal health classes, if I make some money, I'm going to also spend money on something else. Maybe it's a new email platform, or maybe it's a vagina puppet. Or maybe it's a workout outfit to inspire other women to work out and feel good when they work out. So if you're owning your vagina, which is the portal of humanity, I mean, this thing it's it, then you have to really invest time, invest money, invest your emotions, all of that. Food. And that's a whole other topic.
I'm like, we might have to have a follow up with the food part.
Yes, there are vagina foods out there that you really need to be eating that could help unleash your vaginal fitness. And so that's what I mean by vagina CEO, really taking responsibility, ownership, and being courageous and proud of what you own and what you have. It's a beautiful thing. There's nothing to be ashamed about, but you do have some responsibility when it comes to managing it, protecting it, and nurturing it.
And I love you have courses on healthy eating for your vagina, which I had never even thought of until I saw your stuff, Janelle. And I was like, whoa, I'd never even thought about that. But It makes sense because what we eat affects our bodies.
Absolutely. And especially because when you think about it, whenever we have something going wrong with our vagina, usually we have to swallow the medicine. So if, let's say we have an infection, if we're swallowing a pill and that pill that we put through our mouth that goes through our gut can literally change the environment in our vagina, then what do you think happens when you eat nutritious foods, different things that are packed with nutrients that help your vagina to do stuff? And that's what we want. We want it to do the stuff that we want it to do. Yes. And that's what food, and not just food, but even exercise and our emotions and all of these things can really impact how good we feel with our vaginal health.
Oh, so good. Before you tell us where we can find you, do you have anything else to add for women who may be struggling with vaginismus or maybe realizing like, oh, I want to go check out pelvic floor therapy?
I would say, number one is that you're not alone. To know that this is a common problem. This is affecting so many different people. The good side is that it is treatable. I mean, I've seen patients that come in, can't even get a finger in, and now they're having sex. They're like having like a crazy sex life. I'm like, wow, you have sex. It can change. So look up because there is light there, but definitely don't wait. Try to make this something that you prioritize because, again, your vaginal and your sexual health is priority just as much as your physical.
I love that. Where can we find you and all of your resources?
You can find me online on Instagram and on TikTok, Vagina Rehab Doctor. No periods, no dashes, just Vagina Rehab Doctor. And then my website, vaginarehabdoctor.com. Right now, my main thing is my Vagina Food E-Guide, where I tell you 50 foods that are packed with nutrients that can really help you unleash that vaginal fitness that you want. So whether it be dryness or whether it be menopause or vaginal infections or maybe even peeing all the time and you can't control your bladder, I include so many different foods and it's backed by evidence on different things that you can eat on a regular basis that will help you there. So you can find that on my website. And then also every month, usually the first Sunday of each month, I do a vaginal stretch lab where I'm working out with people, we're stretching, we're talking about nutrition, fitness. But beyond that, just going and follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you can learn a lot.
You can definitely learn a lot just from that. But it's so good. Thank you so much for joining me today, Janelle. This was awesome.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I think my biggest takeaway from this episode was just to remember that no matter what you are struggling with in your sex life, there are answers, whether that is learning more about your sexuality and becoming comfortable with it, whether it's kind of shifting some of the beliefs around sexuality to make it more enjoyable for you and your partner, whether it's a medical issue that maybe you need to go to a doctor or a pelvic floor therapist. But there's answers, and there should not be pain during intercourse. So if there is, please don't just sit with it. Please tell your partner. Please go get help. It's important for us as women to advocate for ourselves and to figure things out and talk about it and talk with our partner. I know it can be scary, but the rewards are so huge to be able to connect and share and slowly learn and improve over time. As always, thanks for talking love. Thank you to all of you who listen and join me on this journey, and to our Ladies Talking Love team who make the podcast possible. Thanks to our sound wizard, Kimberly Demers, our newsletter guru, Lauren Barton, and our miscellaneous task whiz, Jana Norman. As always, thanks for talking love.